Hello, my name is Robin Fleck, and I'm an ESOL consultant with the Maine Department of Education. Today, I am going to share a short presentation with you about multilingual learners engaging in unified arts and physical education. The objectives of this presentation are for you to be familiar with key terminology related to multilingual learners and to be more prepared to engage learners in unified arts and physical education, content activities, and assignments. The acronym ESOL, E-S-O-L, stands for English for Speakers of Other Languages. It describes a type of class, teacher, or program that serves multilingual learners. You can say ESOL teacher, ESOL program. Multilingual learners are language learners who regularly come in contact with and/or interact in languages in addition to English. In Maine, we use this term to refer to multilingual learners who are in the process of acquiring English. This term allows us to refer to the students in an asset-based approach. The term newcomers refers to any students and their families who have recently arrived in the United States. Students who arrive in the United States from other countries represent a variety of educational and linguistic backgrounds. Newcomers from different countries speak a variety of languages and have different levels of literacy skills. Newcomers bring a rich collection of strengths and assets to contribute to their learning communities. They may have specific needs based on their personal histories and family circumstances, but they generally share various academic and language challenges when arriving in the United States. When newcomer students and their families enter the United States, they must become familiar with their new country's culture and customs, as well as a new school system and its myriad structures, expectations, and legal requirements. On top of these challenges, many newcomers may have had journeys here that involved hardship and trauma. For all newcomers, being welcomed by school representatives who are culturally competent and can communicate in the language the students and parents understand, whether spoken or in written form, is key. Slife. Slife is an acronym that represents the phrase students with limited or interrupted formal education. Students who are identified as Slife often have little or no primary language literacy and are at risk for dropping out of school. Support beyond traditional ESOL programs may be needed. Students who are identified as Slife may also have experienced poverty, poor health, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, family separation and/or reunification, and changes in family roles in the United States. Getting to know your students is key for all students. And as you get to know your students, and some of you only spend time with the students once a week, it is important to have some basic information. You want to ask your classroom or homeroom teachers to provide you with some basic knowledge about your multilingual learners. Some examples of this knowledge would be the proper pronunciation of a student's name. You can also have the student say their name into your voice recorder on your phone. If it's a difficult name and you want to be able to practice, that's a great way to do it. You need to know the primary language in the home other than English. Is the student engaging with peers using social English? The teachers need to let you know if this student needs any designated supports to actively participate in unified arts activities. Are there any known triggers to students' past trauma? For example, a loud noise like a fire alarm. Has this caused the student to panic, to hide, to cry? It's good to know those things ahead of time if that information is known. And do you need to utilize interpreting services when engaging in communications with the student's family? So if you want to call a family and tell them about an achievement or something that happened in class that day, you need to know if you need to have the assistance of an interpreting service to do that. Some culturally responsive practices that you can use in unified arts and PE classes. Of course, safety has to be first. So if the safety rules can be translated or interpreted for students who can read in their primary language, providing written interpretation is helpful. Also to share these rules with the family so the families can review them with the students, or having an interpreter verbally go through these safety rules, particularly in these classes where you are using different types of machinery that could be a safety issue for students. If a student is wearing a head covering and the head covering is a safety issue, speak to the students to develop a solution so that the students can safely wear a head covering and use the designated tools or machinery. Some students, due to religion, may not be allowed to touch a peer of the opposite gender. So it's good to know about that ahead of time. So when you're planning student groupings or seating assignments in class or in transportation, you are aware of that, or allowing for some various alternatives when playing games. Listen to your students and respond to their express needs. So they will tell you if they have a need, such as I just described about engaging in activities that require close contacts with the opposite sex. When needed, provide girls with sports hijabs. Allow long sleeves under t-shirts or uniforms and leggings under shorts. Incorporate other countries and cultures when considering authors, musicians, musical compositions, artists and artwork, foods, and chefs in your lesson designs. And allow for flexibility in the design of creations for all students to share their talents and cultural heritages. Realize that American society is based on an individualistic culture, and many of our students are coming from a society that is a collectivist culture. Students may be more engaged if allowed to work in partnerships or small groups, with an emphasis on individual accountability for their actions within the group. Help students make the shift to the expectations of Western culture. Students may also come from educational settings where physical punishment or public humiliation was the result of making a mistake. Allow time for students to learn to trust and participate. Be aware that in many cultures, the male is considered dominant and is allowed to treat girls with disrespect or as subservient. Review of the class rules or engagement protocols, etc., help to remind students of the class expectations and the content and language objectives that they are learning. Create visual supports to accompany your verbal directions, classroom safety guidelines, classroom supplies, and classroom protocols. Assign a peer to be a student buddy to multilingual learners. Modify teacher talk by decreasing your rate of speech, We tend to hold students' attention by speaking quickly. In this case, it may not be helpful. Take time to wait for a response when a question is asked. Avoid the use of idiomatic expressions. It's raining cats and dogs. For a newcomer may send young children running to the window looking for the cats and dogs falling out of the sky. Repeating the directions while modeling the actions that you want students to take. Anytime you can include a model, an example of what you want the students to accomplish will benefit students who are multilingual learners. When possible, give your directions one step at a time, again, with oral, visual, and modeling combined together. Create classroom entry and exit routines and allow bilingual dictionaries or glossaries or translation apps when necessary. You can label objects in the room, and you can enlist your monolingual students to support you in helping to create those multilingual labels, and provide opportunities for students to work collaboratively and to verbally interact with one another, and allow students to use their primary languages in small groups or partner discussions. If we want students to increase their language skills, we have to give them as many opportunities to practice speaking the language as possible. Differentiate assignments based on the language supports that teachers have shared with you. Identify the vocabulary that's necessary for the students to be successful in the lesson. If you share the identified vocabulary with the student family and or the ESOL teacher prior to the class, the student may be able to engage with that vocabulary more meaningfully in your lessons. An example of a differentiation would be an art assignment might include a written explanation of why the student chose their media type. A student who is a beginning language learner may only be required to list the media types that he or she chose to use. If the student is able to write in their primary language, he or she could write their explanation in their primary language. It's also helpful to have students create vocabulary notebooks specific to the content they are learning with you. Allow students to include primary language translations in that vocabulary notebook to increase comprehension of new vocabulary and concepts. Encourage all students with frequent positive feedback, particularly in the first months of arrival. Allow for students to have some time and space to engage in activities that do not require the use of language. Engaging in an unfamiliar language and culture is mentally and physically exhausting. Multilingual learners have many assets to contribute to the class and will do so once they feel safe, valued, and that they are an equal partner within the school community. And allow your multilingual learners to show what they know through a wide variety of modalities and assignments. Think about what content and language objectives your students are working to achieve. Revisit the differentiation strategy shared with you by the classroom and ESOL teacher when you are designing your assessments for multilingual learners. Some students may only be able to draw you a picture and do basic labels, while other students can write simple sentences and in sequence. Most of all, have fun. Quite often, it is through the unified arts and PE curriculums that multilingual learners develop confidence in their abilities to express themselves through movement, music, and all various creative art forms. This could be the setting where a multilingual learner takes the first risk to move from the silent phase of language use to trying out verbal communication with English. Encourage students' interaction, and please provide positive reinforcement for all practice communications. Here are some resources that are available to you. And when you download this presentation, you can click on the links and they will become available to you. Thank you for your dedication, and I hope that you have a great school year.